In this chapter, you're going to get introduced to Sass. So what is Sass? Sass is a style sheet language which you can compile to CSS. This means that you can write anything in the Sass language and convert it to CSS, which can be understood by your browser, and apply styling to your different websites. So this is what we call a preprocessor, because it actually preprocesses styling in a different language into CSS. So Sass is one of the many preprocessors available out there, and it's still by far the most popular at the moment. Now, why would you use a preprocessor anyway? Can't you just write simple CSS styling in your CSS style sheets? Well, a preprocessor like Sass comes with so many features which are not available in CSS. Those features will help you write styling in an easier and more organized way. They include things like variables, functions, and so many more, which you're going to learn in this chapter. Now, here comes a very good question. When do you need to use Sass? Well, not all the time. Sometimes you can stick to simple CSS without using a preprocessor. But if you are working on a big project involving large style sheets, and you want those style sheets to be kept well organized and maintainable over time and be able to share them easily across projects, then you need to use a preprocessor like Sass. And you'll see later on in this chapter how you can make use of those features to write well-organized styling using Sass instead of relying on simple CSS. And by the way, this is the official Sass website where you can find tons of documentation about the different Sass features. Now, to use Sass, you need to install it on your computer. And there are several ways of using Sass depending on which system or operating system you use on your computer. For simplicity reasons, I'm going to use Node.js, which will allow us to install Sass on our system using the same process, regardless of what operating system you are using. You will also need some basic terminal commands, which I'm going to cover very briefly. Now, later on in the course, Node and the terminal are going to be covered really in detail. So for now, I'm going to keep it really simple until we come back to Node and the terminal later on in detail. So what is Node? Node is a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. So first of all, JavaScript is a programming or a scripting language which can add interactivity to your website and do so many other things. And you're going to learn JavaScript in the coming chapters. Now, a runtime is an environment where you can write JavaScript. So for now, you don't have to worry about JavaScript at all because we're not going to use it in this chapter. So Node as a JavaScript environment can run and execute JavaScript for us. It's built using the Chrome's V8 engine. That's an engine that can execute JavaScript, and it's built using C++, which is another programming language. Now, one of the reasons why Node is so popular is that it can let you write JavaScript on the server side. Also, Node comes with so many Node packages, which are pieces of code developed by other people, which you can just use out of the shelf. And one of those packages happened to be Sass, which will enable us to install Sass on our system using Node. So for now, you're going to install Node on your computer and then install Sass as a package of Node. So let's go for the latest version. So you've got a couple of files that will be installed on your system. So these are both executables. So an executable file is a file which will execute a set of instructions inside your computer. So the Node file and the npm file. So the node file is going to be responsible for running your node applications, and the npm file is going to be responsible for managing the different node packages on your system. So all you need to do now is keep going through the installation process. It's pretty straightforward, and once you do that, I'm not going to continue because I've got Node already installed on my computer. So to check if you've got Node properly installed on your system, you need to open the terminal. So on a Mac, it's going to be command space, then type terminal, and then terminal. If you are using Windows, then it's going to be the window button plus R, then command, all right, or command.x, and then you press enter. If you are on Linux, it's Control-Alt-T, or just click on terminal in your programs menu. So this is my terminal. So if you open yours, you're going to get a blank page like this. So what this means at the moment is that I'm logged into my system as the user dev island, and I'm currently in the root directory of my system. So if I type ls, it will show me the content of that directory, and here you can see the desktop. So let's move to the desktop. So if I type cd desktop, then I will move to the desktop. So at the moment, I'm inside the folder desktop. So inside my desktop, I'm going to create a directory using the make directory command, and I'm going to call that directory Sass. So now let's move inside this directory. So if I type ls, then I don't get anything because this directory is empty at the moment. So if I go to my desktop, I'm going to find the Sass folder there. So I'm going to open it inside brackets by dragging it to the brackets application. And here we go. So that's my Sass folder, and I'm now ready to add any files to this folder. Now, in order for you to install Sass as a Node package, you need first to create a Node app or a Node project. So to do that, the command you need is npm init. So you're going to be prompted to enter a few details about your project. So like the name of the project and many other things. You don't have to enter those details. But if you want, you can just write any details you want. So the test command is something we're going to enter later on, so I'm going to leave it. All right. So now you see a file inside your project folder called package.json. And that file will summarize all the details which you input right there. And you can amend this file later on. So for example, inside the scripts, I can go and type any commands later on. I'm going to explain to you how that works in a bit. Now you are ready to install the Sass package. So to do this, the command is npm install, and it's called node Sass. You can install any package you like. You just need to replace that with the name of the package. Now I'm going to add an option here, which is save dev, because I'm installing this package only for development purposes. The reason behind that is because I will use Sass only for development purposes to convert Sass files to CSS files. If I want to share my project with somebody else, then I'm going to be sharing the CSS files, not the Sass files. So I don't need the package node Sass to be inside the project to be shared. All right. So let's see what happens once I run this command. It's going to take some time to be installed. So I'm going to pause the video here. All right, now Sass has been installed on my system as a dev dependency for my projects, and you can see it right there. And that's the version of Sass. Now, you'll see that there is a new folder right there, Node modules. So inside this folder, you'll see the different modules used by Sass, and one of those modules is going to be Sass itself. And you can see it right there. All right, now that we've got Sass installed in our project, let's go ahead and use it. So I'm going to create an index.html file and paste some content there, which you can find in the starting source code attached to this lecture. Also, I'm going to create a folder called CSS. That's where our CSS style sheets are going to go. I'm going to create another one, Sass folder, where our Sass files are going to go. So inside the Sass folder, let's create a file, style.scss. That is the extension we're going to use for Sass files. There is another extension that I'm going to show you in a bit. Now, what we want is convert that Sass file to a CSS file once we put some styling in there. So let's open the live preview of brackets and start adding some styling. So this is our starting website, and this is the website that we want to create once we add our styling. So let's start with the navigation bar. So you're going to use Flexbox to arrange the different links inside our nav. So let's do this inside our SCSS file. Now in Sass, there is a very good feature called nesting. So nesting will allow you to nest different components inside each other, just like you do in HTML. So if you look at your HTML, you've got your links nested inside your nav. And you can do exactly the same thing in your styling inside a Sass file. And by the way, Sass stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. So when you are writing Sass, you can use the nesting feature and follow exactly the same hierarchy you've got inside your HTML file. But just bear in mind that over nesting is not something that is recommended. So you use nesting. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to start with the navigation bar. So I'm going to place the nav selector right there. And I'm going to add styling to the nav like this. So first of all, I'm going to make it a flex box by giving it the display property flex. And let's set its background color to this value. Now you wouldn't see any changes in the final website, and that's because we haven't compiled our style.scss file yet into CSS. So to do that, we're going to go back to our package.json file and add a script right there, which we are going to run using the Node package manager. So we don't need that test command. So I'm going to replace it with our own command that I'm going to call compile Sass. And the command is going to be node Sass, then space, the name of the Sass file. or the relative path of the file. In our case, it's going to be sass/style.scss, and then space the name or path of the CSS file. So we want the CSS file to be in the CSS folder, and let's call it style.css. So let's open the command line and run npm run compile Sass. Alright, so now if I open the CSS folder, I'm going to find a new CSS file right there, and you can see the styling that we added to the Sass file right there. So this styling at the moment is pretty straightforward, so there was no changes to be applied to our styling because we haven't used any features that are particular to Sass, and all our styling looked like CSS. Now let's link the index.html file to the CSS file by creating a link element. So the relationship is going to be style sheet, and the type is text CSS, and the href is going to be css/style.css. Now you can see our styling. Now let's go back to our Sass file and add a bit more styling. So I'm going to move to the links inside the navigation elements. I'm going to give them a flex of 1 so that they occupy all the same width. So to do this, since we are using nesting, I'm going to stay inside the nav elements, and I'm going to select the links like this, and I'm going to give each one a flex property of 1. Also, I'm going to remove any decoration by giving text decoration a value of none. Also, I'm going to turn them all to uppercase. So text transform uppercase. And I'm going to increase the font size as well. So let's go for 20 pixels, for example. So what I need to do now is run the command again. And here we go. We can see our changes. And if I visit the style.css file, then I can see the new changes there. Now, it's not very practical that we keep running this command over and over. And there is actually a way to solve that by going to our command and adding an option, W, which stands for watch. Basically, what this means is that we're going to be watching our Sass file for any changes, and whenever we make changes, they're going to be converted to CSS inside our style.css file. So let's go ahead and try this. First, you will need to run the command again. And this time, any changes that you make there should be reflected in the final website. So let's add some padding to our links. So if I save, you'll see the changes happening straight away, which is really practical. Alright, hopefully this gave you a clear introduction to Sass and you're all set up to use Sass for your projects. In the next video, you're going to add more styling to your website using nesting. Also, you're going to get introduced to variables.